Hello everyone, we are on week 12 of our CSA shares. So we have 24 weeks total if you did the full share. We're on week 12, so we're at our halfway point. I am going to go over what we received in our shares, how to store each item, and then ideas of what to use them for, just like I do every week. One quick announcement before we begin. We do have bulk plum tomatoes for sale at the farm. You can buy 5-pound bags for $12. Those are available during pickup days, so either Tuesday or Thursday. And you do not need to pre-order them or anything. And then we also have 25-pound boxes available. These will also be available, both the 5-pound bags and the 25-pound boxes, next week. So you can get them next Tuesday and Thursday. Originally it was just last week and this week. We're extending them a week. They should be available. We still have a lot that you can get. So if you haven't watched Trisha's post on how to slow roast the tomatoes, you can do that for any tomato, but she slow roasts the plum tomatoes and preserves them for the winter time so that you have farm fresh tomatoes during the winter. Please watch that. It's like, her video I think is like a minute and a half long. It's a great recipe which I'm gonna use. There's also, I'm gonna do a few different things with my plum tomatoes. I have 2 boxes that I need to process. If you can, they are wonderful for canning. I'm gonna actually make the oven roasted sauce and just freeze that sauce in Ziploc bags. So there's lots of great ideas. If you have purchased the bulk tomatoes and used them, let us know what you've used them for. If you're canning sauce, if you're making chopped tomatoes and canning those, or if you're just creating different recipes and then freezing them for wintertime use, let us know. So bulk tomatoes available if you want them. I'm not sure if I mentioned the 25-pound bags. So 5-pound bags are $12. I know I said that, but the 25-pound boxes are $35. So you just pay through the farm. So I've been Venmoing, but they accept a couple different, you can do check at the farm, you can Venmo, I think there's also PayPal. So refer to the email for the details on that. All right, so we're gonna jump right into our produce for this week. We'll start with our tomatoes, since we were just talking about the plum tomatoes. This week we have about 2 pounds of our red beefsteak tomatoes, and we have about 2 pounds of the heirloom tomatoes. So heirloom tomatoes tend to look a little bit funkier. They can be red, so this is an heirloom. These are our beefsteaks. So the beefsteaks are more, they look like what you would get in the grocery store. Your heirloom tomatoes you want to use first, and then your beefsteaks. So your heirloom tomatoes are the first thing that you definitely want to put on your menu. You want to use those up. All tomatoes, whether it be the heirlooms, the reds, or the cherry tomatoes that we pick, so we were able to pick 2 quarts of cherries. This one has red, I think there's some orange in the bottom. These all stay at room temperature on the counter. You don't want to put tomatoes into the fridge. It will change their texture and also change their flavor and their nutritional dynamics. So we want to keep them on the counter. Lots and lots of recipes on the blog for tomatoes. The roasted tomato sauce, I used cherries, but you can use anything. That was a couple weeks ago. Of course, they're great for salads. They're great for BLTs. You can do caprese salads. If you still have, I think we got basil last week. If you still have basil from last week, you can use that. Pairs really well with tomatoes. So lots of great ideas for those. All stored on the counter, not the refrigerator. Okay, so that's our tomatoes. We also were able to pick a pint of our ground cherries, and our ground cherries come with this paper covering like a tomatillo. They should be yellow on the inside. When we're picking them, we're picking from the ground, not from the plant, and be gentle with the plants. This week it was really easy to see the bottom, the tarp area where they fall. So you're just grabbing them. They should be like a brownish yellow color on the outside, the husks, not green. If you're picking green, then you're picking from the plant, and those are not ripe. So lots of ideas that are being shared on the Facebook group for ground cherries, and there's also lots of great recipes on the blog. There's chocolate covered ground cherries, there's a ground cherry jam, there's marinades, ground cherry tarts. We're seeing a lot of, since we got a lot last week, if you still have those, because they store really well, and then combine them with this week's, and you can do a ground cherry pie, a ground cherry crumble. If you're getting the fruit share, you can pair the ground cherries with some of the fruit we received in the fruit share. These get stored in the fridge. Ideally, we want to keep their husks on until we're ready to use them, but if you want to take them off, then you're taking the husks we're not eating. So you're taking the husks off, you're rinsing them, and then preparing them however you want to prepare them for. I'm trying to come up with some sort of cocktail recipe for ground cherries because I think that would be fun. So I'm still working on that. I did want to say something else about these. I can't remember. They can also be eaten the way they are. So you do not need to cook them. They can be eaten raw. I also, a couple weeks ago, did a post on dehydrating them. So I threw them, washed them, cleaned them, peeled off the husks, threw them in my dehydrator, and now they're like little preserved candies. You can also freeze these. So I've taken them if I'm not ready to bake with them and I know I'm gonna bake or cook. You definitely don't want to eat them raw out of the freezer, but they preserve really well. So peel them, wash them, dry them, throw them in a Ziploc bag, and freeze them. And you can use them during the winter. So we've seen some ground cherry breads and some muffins and things like that also on the blog. So refer to the blog, not the blog, the Facebook group. Refer to the Facebook group for that, for ideas. Okay, so we're gonna jump into our peppers. We have 3 different forms of peppers this week. We have jalapeños, so these are the same as last week. We're gonna store them in the crisper drawer. You can store them in a plastic bag. I generally don't, I just throw them in the crisper. These are great for adding heat to any sort of recipe. You can eat them raw. You can cook with them. You can throw them into salsas. You can use them on top of tacos. You can pickle them. If you want less heat, open them up, remove the seeds, and remove the flesh from the inside. That's where most of the heat is. They'll still be hot, but they won't be as hot. There's a great recipe from, I believe, last year. That's jalapeno infused honey. Look that up. That's what I plan on making this week. I usually do a big batch of it because it preserves really well. It's a way to preserve the flavor of the jalapenos, but it's really good in dressing. It's really good in cocktails as a sweetener. So that's a good idea for these as well. But we have all the tomatoes, we have peppers, we have onions, so you could do great salsas. These would make a great addition to your salsas. We also have cubanelle peppers. So we've been getting these for a few weeks. They are a sweeter pepper. They're great to stuff, so you can stuff them and cook them. You can eat them raw. I tend to just cut them up and throw them on the table and the boys devour them. These get stored in the crisper drawer as well, and we also have our green bell peppers, same thing, stored in the crisper drawer of your fridge. These we can eat raw or cooked, both of them. We can use them in stir fries, we can use them in the salsas, we can use them in, like if you go back to a recipe from previously in the season, the grill packets, I'm pretty sure I did potatoes and onions and a few other vegetables, but now that we have some newer vegetables, you could change up the vegetables in those grill packets. So you could do any of these peppers you could add in, you could throw in summer squash, and we still have potatoes. So those would be a good idea as well. Great in salads, so slice them up. Put them on top of your salads, eat them raw. Stir fries, just roasted, you can grill them. So those are our cubanelle and our jalapeno peppers. Green peppers, same idea, storing them in the crisper drawer. Same basic, they're gonna taste different than the cubanelle peppers, but same basic idea as the cubanelle peppers. So you can use them in grow packets, you can eat them raw, you can, what else? You can stuff them. And they'd be great if you made a sauce and did like a stuffed pepper. So you could do a meat version, you could do a rice version of the stuffing. You could add in a little bit of the summer squash and some of the onion. If you have garlic left over or garlic in the house, throw that in. Create your stuffing, throw them in, make a nice sauce, and that would be a meal all in itself. You could also try stuffing them with quinoa instead of rice. So doing that sort of stuffing instead. All right, so that's our peppers. We have a new item this week is our edamame. So we got to pick these in the field, same as our sugar snap peas. So we want these fat, not flat. They're a little bit harder to see, but they bubble where there's beans inside. They're best served if you steam them or boil them just quickly. They'll turn a nice bright green, and then I like to season them with sea salt, and then just serve them as a snack. Generally cold, you can serve them warm, but we just tend to serve them cold, chilled. So I'll probably do that tonight, and that way they're ready for the kids to just grab and eat as a snack. These are stored in the fridge in a plastic bag. We have sweet onions. So these are cured. They go in a cool, dry place. We want to keep onions, when we store them, we want to keep them away from potatoes because potatoes give off a little bit of moisture, so they're going to make your onions go bad quicker. So store them separately from potatoes, but a cool, dry, dark place. Sweet onions, we can eat raw. We can slice them up nice and thin, put them on salads. You can put them on burgers. You can combine them. They'd be really good with our heirloom tomatoes and a tomato and onion salad. They make a wonderful onion soup. So I love sweet onions as the base for an onion soup. You can grill them. You can roast them. So basic, same idea as all of our other onions, our uncured onions, our torpedo onions, these, and we'll eventually get regular onions as well, our regular yellow onions. The flavor profile is just gonna be a little bit different. So these are sweeter versus the spicier torpedo onions. So cool, dry, dark place. I don't know if I said it, but salsas, they would make a great addition to salsas. It would give a different flavor profile than the yellow onion. All right, spaghetti squash, we've seen this guy before. Cool, dry place. This is probably the last item you need to worry about for this week. So this guy lasts a long time. You can roast it whole. You can slice it in half, scoop out the seeds and roast it that way. If you refer to the recipe from last week, it's a garlic herb spaghetti squash. I have been cooking spaghetti squash for a long time in our house. I've cooked it all different ways. My favorite way to cook it is to slice it into rounds, remove the seeds, and cook it that way. It only takes about a half hour as opposed to 45 minutes to an hour any of the other ways. And it also, so the strands of the spaghetti squash go around, I think, so it creates a nicer texture for the actual spaghetti when you pull it out after it's been roasted. So if you have not made that recipe from last week, try that. It's super yummy. I made an entire spaghetti squash as a side using that recipe, and it wasn't enough for our family of 5. We all had to divvy it up so that there was enough for everybody to try it, but it was delicious. It was super tasty with all the fresh herbs and the garlic in it, and an easy side. So try that with this. We also got a watermelon. So you had a choice today. This is both of the watermelons are red. This is the seeded watermelon. And then there was a smaller version that was a seedless watermelon. So our watermelons get stored in the fridge. You can slice them up and just serve them as a snack. You can serve them with like cottage cheese or yogurt as a breakfast, or again as a snack. You can make a watermelon salad. You can puree or juice the watermelon and make a cocktail or a mocktail, or just serve it as a juice for fun for kids. So lots of different ways to use watermelon. It's typically doesn't get very far. Any of the melons don't get very far in our house. If I slice them up, they're pretty much gone within a day because the kids love them. So store that in the fridge. Okay, we have our summer squash. Lots of different varieties, the yellow, the zucchini. This week's recipe will showcase our summer squash. So save those, hold on to those if you want to use the recipe for on Thursday. That'll get posted. These are great grilled, they're great roasted, they're great in stir fries. You can use them in baked goods. So if you want to shred them and not use them right away, shred them, measure them out, throw them in a Ziploc bag and freeze them. And then a quick defrost. Leave them on the counter a little bit just to let them defrost, and then you can use them in your baked goods. So we've seen a lot of zucchini breads, zucchini muffins, zucchini brownies have shown up a lot, so I'm dying to try that as well. There was a couple of recipes posted for zucchini brownies, so refer to the Facebook group for ideas there. Our favorite way is just slicing them up and grilling them just as a side, just drizzling a little oil on them, salt and pepper, grilling them and letting the flavor just speak for itself. But this week's recipe is delicious. So save probably 2 of them. I got 4. 2 of them if you want to make that recipe, and you'll get that on Thursday. 2 more items. So we have new potatoes. These are the same as last week. Typically we want to store these in the fridge because they're new, they're uncured, so they won't last as long. Lots of recipes on the blog for these. There's a great dish combining sliced potatoes and summer squash. There's a smashed potato recipe on there. I'm pretty sure I also have a quiche that I used the potatoes as the crust. So that's a great idea as well. You can simply roast them. You can do crispy potatoes, roast them a little bit longer. They pair really well with garlic and fresh herbs. Potato salad, we've seen a lot of that posted on the blog, especially with the weather this week. It's looking like the week itself is gonna be really hot. So you probably wanna do less cooking, at least less oven cooking, more grilling. So those will also work on the grill. So you can slice them in half and grill them. You can make those grilled packets with the foil. That recipe was posted earlier in the season. All right, last but not least, I think this is everything. We have parsley. So I don't think we've had parsley yet this year or this season. Parsley is going to be treated just like cilantro and dill. So we want to take it out of the rubber band, throw it in a cup of water, and store it in the fridge. I do leave it just like this, and it lasts really well. You can actually put a plastic bag around it to keep the moisture in. It just gets my refrigerator a little bit messy with all the plastic bags, so I just keep it in the glass just like this, along with my cilantro and dill. And I still have cilantro. I think I have cilantro and dill in there actually from previous weeks that I haven't used all up. So parsley is really great as a garnish. It's great in a salad. It's great in sauces. Actually wonderful in smoothies. It's really healthy for you, so adding a couple sprigs of it to a smoothie is gonna be a really good idea. If you are not going to use it this week, although the recipe for Thursday does call for fresh herbs, so this would be a good herb to use for it. If you're not going to use it, it will last a little bit. Keep an eye on it. If it starts to wilt, if your water drains, you need to refill the water. But if it starts to look like it's not lasting or it's starting to end its life in your fridge, then you're gonna wanna preserve it. You can throw it into the freezer just like we've done with the dill. I think we did cilantro that way. Also, just throw it on paper towels, put it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it in a single layer like that so that you can pull it out and use it anytime. You can dehydrate it, throw it in your dehydrator, lay it out. I think there's a way to microwave it too. I don't generally microwave my herbs, but you can microwave the moisture out. And then it just crumbles and it's just like a dried herb. Your general recommendation for using dried herbs versus fresh herbs, if a recipe calls for dried herbs, like let's say a recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of a dried herb, I use a tablespoon of fresh chopped herb. So after it's chopped, after it's nice and small, I use a tablespoon. They're less potent, obviously, because they have more moisture in them, so we need to use more. I think that's it. Dehydrate, you can freeze. Recipe this week will showcase something that you can use for these. These would also be really good with the potatoes. So you could do a parsley potato, even a potato salad. So that goes in our fridge. If there are any questions, just let me know. Anything that you're struggling to use. Obviously, when we get our shares home for the week, you want to focus first on all of the items you still have left from last week if you're a weekly pickup, or from 2 weeks ago if you're an every other week pickup. Get rid of those first. So how can I use those? How can I get those out of the fridge or off the counter? That's your first goal. Then your next goal is using the items that aren't gonna last as long. So our heirloom tomatoes would probably be the #1 thing this week. And then probably like our watermelon, so it's nice and sweet still. And then push off the items that we don't need to use necessarily this week. So our onions are gonna stay good. Our spaghetti squash is gonna stay good. Our potatoes will probably stay good as long as we keep them in the fridge. So some of the other items we wanna focus on using first. And if you have any trouble, if you have an abundance of a certain ingredient, you're not sure what to use, please use our Facebook group. That's been a great place to share and educate and show people how we're using different ingredients, and I'm happy to answer questions. So if there's certain things that you're really struggling with using, just tag me in a post and we will help you find ways on how to use it. All right, guys, I will see you next week.